Okay, welcome to the Great Ways to Study workshop. This workshop today is primarily related to textbook study methods, and I don't know if you love textbooks. Most people say no thank you, but when people open textbooks and try to read and concentrate and learn, that's one of the hardest aspects for most people of being a college student. People have said if there were no textbooks, I would love college. But there are textbooks. These are the three topics that we're going to cover today, and then there will be a few more related to it next week. The first one we're going to talk about for a few minutes is summaries. Everybody here knows what summaries are at the end of chapters in textbooks. Do all textbooks have summaries at the end of each chapter? No. They should. It should be a law, but they don't. But whenever there is a summary at the end of a chapter, that usually covers 15, 20, 30 pages worth of material, and it boils it down to one or two, which is very valuable. But I want to see if you can figure this out. I ask students all the time, when you get to a summary at the end of a chapter, what do you do with it? What's your approach? A lot of people give me a very scary answer. What do you think they say? Yeah, they say, oh, I don't do the summaries. I skip those. I say, why do you skip them? And usually they either say, because I'm lazy, and because when I get to the end of the chapter, it's the last thing, so if I skip the last thing, I'm done. And so that's a simple idea. And then other people say this. They say, because every time I look in a summary, there's nothing new in there. It's just the same thing I just read in the chapter, and I didn't like it when I read it, so why would I want to read it again in the summary? So they just ignore that. I hope you know that's not a very good idea. For a person to ignore a summary usually causes their grade on the test to drop. So I'm going to make a guess here, and this is all it is. The average college class where the textbook is an important part of what you do, and that's most classes, my guess is that somewhere between 70 and 90% of everything that's in the summary is going to show up on the test in one form or another. It may even be closer to 100% in some areas. That's because the summary is made up of nothing but main ideas and important facts from the chapter. So what I want to show you is this. I want you to learn, if you haven't already, not only to pay attention to the summary, but you should be an expert at it, because it should help you when the test comes. And there are only two ways I know to help a person to be an expert at a summary. The first one doesn't work very well, and that's to read it about 20 times and hope it soaks into your brain. That's better than not reading it, but that's not the best. And the second way to become an expert at this is what I'm going to teach you, which is one of my favorite methods. It's something that I used a lot when I was in college, and whenever you can find something that helps you and it doesn't take a lot of time or effort and it's helpful, that's good. That's kind of what we want. So I want to have you take a look at this. Could you pass one straight to the back there and across? Thanks. Okay, what you're looking at here when you get this is a summary from a real college textbook in the area of health. It's not important that you know any of this, but I want you to look at it, take a quick glance at it, and let me know something that should be a very easy thing. What do you notice here that looks different than any summary you've ever seen before?
Starts with it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that too. But that's just the way that book was. But what did you say again? Yeah, blanks all over the place. I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever seen a summary with blanks in it. It's just regular text normally. Well, that means that somebody actually put these blanks in there, inserted them in there. Who do you think did that?
You?
Yeah, me. Boy, you accuse me. Yeah, that's right, me. I took what you need to have in your hand, which is a little tool that's one of the best tools you could have as a student. What do you need to have in your hand to create blanks on a piece of paper? You need whiteout, right? Liquid paper, whiteout, whatever you call it. And so what I did to create what you're looking at here, which again didn't take hours and hours, in fact it just took minutes, was I made a copy of the actual summary, that's what this is, and then I grabbed my whiteout and I read through each sentence and then went back and whited out certain words, and then when I was done I let it dry for a while, and then I grabbed a black pen and I made the blanks just so that I could see a little better where they were. Okay, all of that whole process takes very little time and very little effort. Now, two quick things before I go into this anymore. How do you know which words you're supposed to white out? How do you determine that? Because you're the one with the whiteout in your hand. So what kind of words do you white out?
Vocabulary?
Yeah, vocabulary. The easiest answer is important words. Okay. I've had a few students misunderstand this before, and they actually went through and whited out words, but they whited out the word the, and, like that. And what you're trying to create for yourself, obviously, what this is like a test, a fill-in-the-blank test. And it's very embarrassing if you do it the wrong way, and then you go back later and you see a blank, and you're thinking, what word goes in there? Oh, I know, it's the. You know, what is that, right? So the words you take out, it's your choice totally, but they are the key words. And the other thing, it's a really smart move on your part not to white out too many words, not to go crazy with the whiteout. There's only one place on this page where I kind of went crazy with the whiteout. Where is that? Yeah, number 3. Blank, 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 all of that. Normally you don't want to do that. Why did I do that here? It's because it's a list. And I wanted to be able to write in all the words so that I would know when a test came. If you normally read a sentence in your summary when you go back over it and it says the blank of the blank, blank, blank is blank, good luck even knowing what that's asking. So you want to sort of underuse the whiteout a little bit. And if you look at this carefully, I could have whited out 5 or 10 or 15 more words easily, but you don't want to go overboard with it. So after I was done, and there's nothing special, by the way, about this number. There are 36 blanks on here. So this is like a 36 question test now. After completing it so that it looks like this, what you would do would be to go to the cheapest copy place you could find and make about 5 to 10 copies of this, and then take them home and put them away somewhere. You can do this, what I just described, before you've read the chapter, while you're reading it, afterward, anytime, it doesn't matter. And then, when you're all finished reading the chapter that this is the summary of, how much of this information are you supposed to know? Yeah, all of it. So I've had some people say maybe 51, 2%. No, all of it, right? Because probably most of it is going to show up on the test. How do you know if you know it? Only one way to find out. You go to your stash of little quizzes, you grab one, and you sit there and you take the test, and you fill in the blanks, as many as you can. When you're done, you correct it. And what do you need to correct something? You need an answer key. What's the answer key? Yeah, the actual summary in the book, right? So you put it side by side, just takes a minute to correct it. I always used to do this by correcting in a different color, because that helps you to sort of see where you messed up. And then what you do is you put a number 1 in the corner, meaning that this is my first attempt, and then you study it for a while, and then you put it away and you go away for a while, even if it's an hour or 2. Now, quick question for you. How do you think you're going to do on this the first time you try? What do you think? Yeah, not so good. And I've had some people say, oh no, I get 100%. And I said, wow, how intelligent you are. That's so great. Why would you get 100%? And they said, well, because I'm the one who took the words out. So I know which ones they are. And whenever somebody says that to me, I look at them and say, I think you're giving yourself way too much credit in the memory department. If you do what I just showed you and then you put them away for a few days, when you pick it up to take it, it'll be almost like someone else made it. And you'll either know it or you won't, just like on any test. So I'm going to give you a number that's just an example. And that is, let's say that the first time you take this, you get 15 right out of 36. Now that's less than half. So what grade is this? Yeah, F. not a C minus minus minus. It's an F. It's never fun in life ever to get an F on a test, but whenever this happened to me, which was often, I would think, I just got an F. I'm so glad I got this at home 2 days before the test rather than on the real test, right? Because it's no harm, no foul. It doesn't count. Okay, later on that day or the next day, I go back and I grab another blank copy and I sit for a few minutes and I take it again, correct it, study it, put a 2 in the corner, put it away, go away. That over and over as many times as you can over the last few days before the test. Okay? Now, the second time you take it, how should you do? Yeah, better. How much better? I don't know. If you do worse, come see me, because something is going on. But let's say on the second try, you get 23 out of 36. So that's a nice big improvement. Well, if you did the math on this and you figured out the percentage, now you got a D. So then you can go to anybody you live with and confuse them totally by saying, guess what, I just got a D. And they're saying, why are you so excited? Well, an hour ago I got an F. In other words, things are getting better, right? And then the bottom line of this, why this tends to help in addition to what I've already mentioned, is that the night before the real test, you grab your last copy, maybe it's the 4th one or the 9th one or whatever, and you take it one last time. How are you going to do on it the last time? Yeah, you should, let's say this. Let's say this is your 7th try. You get 35 out of 36 because you're a human being, so you miss one, right? Everybody here knows what grade that is, right? And so, I forgot to mention earlier that what some people have told me is they took it the first time and they did really badly. And so they crumbled it up and threw it away, because who wants to keep something like that? But you don't want to do that. You keep them all, and that's so that at the end you have this final payoff. You grab all 7 copies, or however many there are, and you find a table or the floor in your living room or whatever, and you lay them all out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And then you go back and look at the first one, and then look at the last one, and then just stand there and admire yourself. Okay, and what are you admiring? Yeah, your progress, your improvement, right? And what is that supposed to do for you the next day? Confidence. Yeah, confidence. If I had you read this summary 5 times, and then you came back here some other day, and I was going to give you a test on it, and I met you right at the door, and I said, are you ready? Do you know everything really well? All you could do if you read this 5 times would be to say, hope so. I read it a lot. I think it's in there somewhere. But there's not a lot of confidence. When you do this, you have physical proof of the fact that you've improved. That always encourages people. Now, I want to tell you one last thing about this. This should be kind of obvious, but I always like to mention it. If you study this way, it's a very helpful way whenever you have a good summary in a textbook, but just knowing what words go in a bunch of blanks doesn't make you completely ready to take the test. You have to study in other ways as well. But again, the idea, back to this, is that virtually every fact on this page would be on your test. And if you don't know the key words that go in the blanks, that's usually a bad sign. So you continue to do this, and again, it doesn't take hours to do. It's pretty simple, and it's also kind of turns it into a little bit of a game. You're competing against yourself to see if you can do better each time, and that sounds a little better than just staring at it hour after hour. Okay, so that's the idea on this one. Any questions on this? Okay. The second one of the 3 that we're going to talk about today is a method that most people have never heard of and hardly anybody has ever tried, but it actually works great in certain textbooks. Not all, but in certain ones. And that's called reading in layers. What I'm going to do to teach you this is I'm going to do this sort of backwards. Instead of explaining what we're doing, I want to actually do this with you. So you're going to learn by doing. And I'm going to hand this to you, and I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm going to hand it upside down, which is kind of a strange way. And I don't want you to turn it over and look at it until I get back to the front, because I want us to turn it over at the same time and do this little activity together. So you can just keep it in front of you, but no peeking yet. In just a minute, when everybody's set, I'm going to ask you to turn the page over, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to read this together. I'm going to read it out loud. You just follow along silently. And we're not going to read the whole page. That would take way too long. We're only going to read certain sentences that have been selected. I'll explain later why. And you'll know which sentences we're going to read because they're numbered on there. And what I want you to try to do, I know this is kind of difficult, but I want you to try, is stay with me as I read the sentences, and don't let your eyes wander and read other things on the page. I know there's a temptation to do that, but just focus on what we're doing, and then I'm going to kind of put you to the test on this a little. Okay? So go ahead and turn it over. And let me read these sentences. Number 1, eating disorders are grouped into 3 categories: obesity, bulimia, and anorexia nervosa. Number 2, obesity is the condition of being overweight to the extent that a person's health and lifespan is adversely affected. Number 3, while the majority of cases of obesity are psychologically based, some have been demonstrated to have a biological component. Number 4, bulimia is sometimes called the silent killer because it is difficult to detect. Number 5, this disorder involves a cycle of eating binges and purges. And number 6, anorexia nervosa is a nutritional deficiency disease characterized by severe, prolonged weight loss. Okay, now here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you about a minute, and I want you to go back and reread those 6 sentences as many times as you can. Don't read anything else on the page again. Just focus on those and just soak it into your brain, and then I'm going to put you to the test on it. So you got 1 minute to learn these a little bit better. All right, what I'd like everybody to do is go ahead and take that handout and turn it over so that you can't see it. No peeking, okay? And I'm going to ask, just for volunteers really quickly to go through here, what was one of the eating disorders on the page? Bulimia, another one? Obesity, and anorexia nervosa. The definition was given for obesity, and it was kind of long, so it's always kind of hard to remember, but it says the person is overweight and 2 things are affected. Anybody remember one or both? Health and life. Boy, you're doing well. Health and lifespan. That's good. What is the source of obesity usually, according to that? Psychological. And then every once in a while? Biological. And what's the nickname given to bulimia? Silent killer. Why is it called that?
It's often difficult.
Hard to detect. And what does it involve?
Eating and binges.
Binges and purges. And then the last part, and if you can get this all, I'm very amazed. The definition was given for anorexia nervosa, long definition. It describes it as a certain kind of disease, and it also describes the weight loss with 2 words that describe it. What do you remember? Ooh, everybody got quiet all of a sudden.
Characterized by extreme prolonged weight loss.
That's almost exactly right. What kind of disease is it? Nutritional deficiency disease. You can read that 20 times and it's hard to stick in your mind because it's a long phrase. And then it's severe and prolonged. Those are the weight loss. Okay. Now, I want you to go ahead and turn the page back over. And what we just did was called reading in layers. Okay. But now we want to go back and figure out, what was that all about? Well, what is that? And the basic way you do this is that you read certain sentences that you've selected, and then you test yourself on what you just read. And every time you can't remember something, what do?
Go over it again.
Yeah, you cheat. Oh yeah, and then you say it. And you keep practicing until you can say the whole thing like we just did. Okay? So, what is this all about? Well, when you read in layers, this method requires you to read 3 types of sentences. The first 2 are the most common for sure, and then the third one is every once in a while. When you look at these sentences and you look at sentence number 1, 3, 4, and 6, all of those have something in common with each other. I want to see if you can figure out what that is. It has to do with location. That's my hint. 1, 3, 4, and 6. Where are those? Yeah, beginning of a paragraph. So the number one thing, this is kind of the primary feature of this, is that you read the first sentence of each paragraph. Okay, and those obviously aren't hard to find. You can locate them quickly and you read them. Why is it maybe helpful to read the first sentence of a paragraph? What's the point of that?
Topic sentence.
Yeah, topic sentence, and then what does the rest of the paragraph do? Give details, right? Now, is that always the way paragraphs are written? No. If I were made the king of all textbooks or whatever, I would make that a law because it makes your job a lot easier as a student. Sometimes in a textbook, the main idea of a paragraph is the last sentence or it's buried in the middle somewhere. That makes it very confusing. But a lot of textbook authors actually write their books this way, where most of the time the first sentence of a paragraph is a definition or some other big fact, and that helps you. So that's why you focus on that in this method. Now, sentence number 2 is not the first sentence of a paragraph, obviously, and this is hard for people to see, so you just have to kind of trust me on this. The word obesity at the start of sentence number 2 is in bold print. It doesn't really look like it that much because this has been copied so many times, but it is. So the second type of sentence you read when you do this is you read any sentence with a bold print word. And again, those are easy to find. You don't have to hunt for them. They're right there. Why is it important to read a sentence with a bold print word? Because it has a bold print word, right? So the author is saying this is an important word. So you read that sentence, okay? So these are pretty easy. And then there's only one sentence here that we haven't really accounted for yet, which is sentence number 5. If you look at that, that is not the first sentence of a paragraph. It has no bold print words. So why was that picked? And the answer is in the sentence right before it, sentence 4. If you look carefully at sentence 4, you know that not only is that the first sentence of a paragraph, but it also has a bold print word. The word bulimia is in bold. So when I was doing this, when I was setting up this page, and I saw that it had a bold print word and it's the first sentence of a paragraph, what did I assume I would read in that sentence? Yeah, the definition of it, right? Did I get that in there? No, I got an interesting little nickname, right? Silent killer, but it didn't really tell me what it was, so I had to look a couple sentences further down, and then I found it. So what does that mean? Well, it means this. The last part of what you do, which won't happen a lot, but every once in a while, is you read any other sentence that seems important. So even if it's not the first sentence of a paragraph, even if it has no bold print words, if for some reason your eyes are drawn to it, you read that too, okay? And when you do this with textbooks, by the way, you're not supposed to get out your pen or pencil and number the sentences in your book. The reason I did that was so that you could see where I wanted you to look, but obviously you can find these easily and sort of spot those, so you just basically read, okay? Now, this is how you do it. It doesn't work with all textbooks because all textbooks are not written where the first sentence has something significant. But what I wanted to tell you about this is sort of the purpose. When people first learn how to do this, they think, oh, this is going to be my favorite reading idea ever, because you skip all kinds of stuff. And you think how fast you could read a chapter in a book when you just read those and you think, man, I'm a speed reader, this is great. Sorry to tell you, this is not a substitute for reading the whole thing. If I gave everybody in here a test right now on those 6 sentences, most of you would pass to get an A. If I actually gave you a test on the whole thing, it would be an F for everybody because you haven't even read the page yet. So this is actually a step of preview. It's something that you do first and then you go back and read the whole thing. And people always say, you mean there's something else I have to do? I'd rather just read it. But the purpose for this, and this is kind of where I'll end with this, and by the way, let me go ahead and start the sign-in sheet if you would, is this. When people read the sentences that I showed you first and they go back and learn them, everything else they read, once they start reading this, all these details fits into what they've already learned. It's almost like they took a bunch of folders, labeled them, and every fact they just sort of stick in the right place. And usually when you do that first and go back, everything just sort of fits into your brain and you remember it a lot better. That's the purpose behind this. And so again, it's almost too late for now because your finals are just a couple weeks away, but for spring, when you first get into a class that has a big textbook and you think, I remember that reading in layers method, take one page, read the first sentence of each paragraph and sentences with bold print words, just that. And when you're done, you'll either think, wow, I got a lot of important information from that, which means that that book is probably good to use this for, or you'll get to the end of that and you'll think, I have no idea what I just read. And the reason is because in that book, it may be that the first sentence of each paragraph, for example, is just an introduction, and the main important points are way down further, so then this won't work. So you can figure out really easily whether it sort of clicks or not. Okay, any questions on this one? All right. Okay, this is from an anatomy book. I don't know if you've had anatomy or not, but that's like a separate foreign language that you have to learn. And the information on this page, which you'd never know unless somebody told you or you had background, is actually about the brain, different parts of the brain. And this, as you look at the top, you see that it's from page 408 to 410. That's 3 pages. How could I fit 3 pages worth of textbook material on here? It's because the rest of it was all diagrams of the brain. So this is the actual text from 3 pages. Now, let me read a small part of this, and then I'll get to the point behind giving it to you. The white matter underlying the cortex consists of myelinated and unmyelinated axons extending in 3 principal directions. 1. Association fibers transmit nerve impulses between gyri in the same hemisphere. 2. Commissural fibers transmit impulses. And already I'm getting a headache, and I'm thinking, are you kidding? To learn this, not only do you have a dictionary beside you, but this is only 3 pages out of a 30-page chapter. So can you imagine learning 10 times this much to get ready for a test? It's pretty overwhelming. Well, rather than learning it this way, by just reading it and then going over and over and over it, there's another way that I think you're going to find kind of interesting to learn this, and it has to do with outlining. And so I want you to keep that handout in front of you for just a minute, and I'm going to give you another handout that I want you to compare with that one. And then I'm going to do an exercise with you and see how all of you were incredibly sharp on that first one. So now my expectations are really high for you, so that may be dangerous. Take a look at this right beside your other one, kind of back and forth. Okay, as you see on the original page, the actual text, there are 2 main topics on that page, which are white matter and basal ganglia. Then you look over on the outline, and what are the 2 topics there? The 2 main topics? White matter and basal ganglia. So in other words, these 2 are exactly the same, except the way they're put on the page, okay? And I want to demonstrate something to you, and so I want you to take this handout, the first one of the 2, and I want you to turn that over so you can't look at it anymore. And I just want you to keep this outline in front of you. And this is called class participation, so that means I need to hear a lot of voices. Don't raise your hand, I just want you to go for it. I'm going to ask you a few questions first with this right in front of you. So that's about as easy as it's ever going to get. So again, how many topics are on this page? 2. What's the first one? White matter. Second one? Basal ganglia. Underneath white matter, how many topics are there? There are 2. What's the first one? Basic facts. Second one? Types of fibers. Okay, now that's pretty easy, right? Turn the page over so you can't see it. How many topics are on the page? 2. First one? White matter. Second one? Okay. Under white matter, how many topics? 2. First one? Basic facts. Second one? Types of fibers. How many basic facts are there? How many types of fibers? I don't know. We haven't looked yet. Go ahead and take it and look again. Okay, again, just repeat with me. Okay, how many topics on the page? Two. First one, white matter. Second one, basal ganglia. Under white matter, how many? Two. First one, how many? Three. Second one, types of fibers, how many? Three. Okay, and then take a look under types of fibers and you see the names of the three fibers there. When you look at the first letter of each one of those three, what word can you make out of those three letters? You can make two, actually. One would be cap. The other one would be pack. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and use cap. All right. So while you're looking at it, which one is this? Some of you are looking at me like, what's the answer? Look here, right? Let's start here again. What's this one? Commissural. And projection. Okay, now turn it back over and we'll see how smart you are. Okay, how many topics are on the page? Two. What's the first one? White matter. The second one? Basal. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Under white matter, how many topics? Two. First one? Basic facts. Second one? Types of fibers. How many basic facts are there? Three. What are they? I don't know. How many types of fibers? Three. Okay. What's this one? Yeah. What's this one? Association and projection. Now, before we go any further, when you leave here today, if you run into somebody you know, or maybe even when you get home, somebody in your family, if they say, what did you do in school today? You say, well, I did a few things, but I went to a workshop and I learned some things. What did you learn? Well, I learned that in the white matter of the brain, there are three types of fibers. And they look at you and go, wow, that's very impressive. What are they? You say, well, to remember that most effectively, I use the acronym CAP. And the C is for commissural, the A is for association, the P is for projection. And they look at you, man, you learned a lot today. And then here's what they ask you. What do those different fibers do? And you say, gotta go. And then you run, right? Because you haven't gotten that far yet, okay? So go ahead and turn the page back over. If we continued with this, what you would be doing is, and again, this is the benefit of outlining, is that you start on the left and you keep repeating, and then you add one little layer each time, like we're doing. And the next thing you would do would be to learn the basic facts, and then after that you would start to learn what is the truths were about the different fibers, just kind of layering on each set of facts. Now, if I tested you next week in the workshop, and by the way, I'm not going to do that because otherwise nobody's going to come back, but just assuming, okay, that when you walked in, I gave you a test on this material, but I said this. I said, you know, when you leave here in a few minutes, you're not allowed to take both of these with you. You're only allowed to take one. That's all you can take. Which one would you take to study? The outline. Yeah, almost everybody says the outline. I say, well, why? It's the same thing. And they go, no, it's not. Okay, it's the same thing, but the way it's packaged makes it look a little more hopeful for most people. A lot of times people look at this and you see all the words that are in bold print and you're thinking, boy, those are all terms that I would need to know for my anatomy test. And if you read this and you highlighted certain things and you read it 20 times, you'd have no real idea whether you had it or not. But if you actually studied the outline and you kind of did it the way that I showed you, at the very end you'd realize that you learned way more than you thought you could. Now, it would be nice if every textbook had every page like this. Then everybody would get A's in every class and all that. But it's not the case. Can you take the time to take everything in your book and turn it into outlines of your own? Yes, if you never want to sleep again and you never want to eat again, you could actually sit there. It takes time to do, but my main point here is that most people, and this is not true of everybody, but most people learn a lot better when they can see connections and relationships like this rather than just seeing a bunch of black ink on a paper. And if you are ever in a class that's pretty tough and you read through 1 or 2 pages and you realize that those pages were just filled with one definition after the other, kind of dense or compacted, then you just thinking, how in the world am I going to learn all this? What you do is say, let me try to make an outline out of it and see if that's easier for me to study. One of these days after the semester's over, if you still have these, if you haven't made paper airplanes out of them or used them as scratch paper, you can always sit for a little while and go back and look back and forth and try to see how this was constructed. Sometimes people look at this and they see, wow, small a and 3, and it seems like it's extremely complicated, but it's not that difficult once you are able to read things and know how to plug them in. And of course, most things you get in college are not quite this advanced and difficult, so if you can learn how to do it with this, you should be able to learn how to do it with some other things as well. And so that's the goal of all of this, is to say again that this doesn't work with every textbook or every class. If you tried to do this with a math textbook, have fun. I don't think that would work. So again, you're trying to learn a whole bunch of different strategies and tools and then figure out which one is the perfect fit for that book as opposed to that one. And no method works great for every book. And also, no method works great for every student. It depends on how your brain works, etc. But if you have all these as kind of ammunition and you remember them, you can just experiment early in the semester and find out what the perfect fit is. And there should be one. Sometimes people can even use 2 or 3 of these techniques in the same class. Other times only one works. But whatever works is kind of helpful. Okay? So any questions on this one? That clear to everybody? Okay, and then I want you to look up at me. Do not look down. What are the 3 fibers again? Commissural, association, and projection. When you leave here in a minute, if I walk down the hall and I hear you saying cap, commissural, I'll be so happy. Even you say, I never need to know that in my entire life. Well, it just shows you that when you learn something a certain way, it sticks, and then you can show off your knowledge and then hope nobody asks you any follow-up questions, because then you got to run. Okay? Okay, thank you very much for coming today, and I want to get the sign-in sheet.